And, want to transition to a little bit of NFL because obviously the next big thing on the NFL draft calendar, or on the sports calendar really, is the NFL draft. And it's kind of crazy because there are so many different narratives that are popping up. Mac Jones moving up draft boards, Justin Fields potentially moving down draft boards. And there's just so many narratives going on. And so what I kind of want to do, there was a new piece of information that came out today that really leads to an older piece of information from earlier this week that I want your opinion on. And so, listen, it's draft season. You hear all sorts of crazy stuff. But there was a report out, a lengthy report from The Athletic earlier today, which interviewed a bunch of anonymous GMs and coaches and stuff like that. And so it said in this Athletic report, if you told me that Justin Fields was going to be better than Trevor Lawrence in 5 years, I would say, yes, that could happen. That was an anonymous GM told that to The Athletic. And so I thought that quote was kind of interesting in the context of what happened earlier this week with Trevor Lawrence. I know you and Chris touched on it briefly, but for the audience that hasn't fully heard the quotes, I'll read them really quick, Rob, and then I want your response. But Trevor Lawrence, of course, the presumptive number one pick since the beginning of time. No one has ever debated his place as the best player in this draft. He sat down for a pretty lengthy interview with Sports Illustrated, and he said a few different things where he said, it's hard to explain that because I want people to know that I'm passionate about what I do and it's really important to me, but I don't have the huge chip on my shoulder that everyone's out to get me and I'm trying to prove everybody wrong. I just don't have that. I can't manufacture that. I don't want to. And I think that people mistake that for not being competitive. I think that's unhealthy to a certain extent. He's talking about that chip, just as always thinking that you've got to prove somebody wrong, you've got to do more, you've got to be better. That on top of the fact that Trevor Lawrence's father said he's not an I want to win a Super Bowl at all costs quarterback. His high school coach says that he could walk away from football at any time. Now we have this anonymous GM saying that he believes in 5 years Justin Fields can be better. Take it whichever direction you want, Rob, but what I'm really more curious about, not just the Justin Fields element of this, but are Trevor Lawrence's comments about being worried or not having a major chip on your shoulder. His former coach says he could walk away from football. If you were Urban Meyer, if you were the Jags brass, if you were a Jags fan, would that concern you at all?
It wouldn't. I think this is where one of the issues I have with football. It's this mob mentality. Everybody has to tell you tell you how much they can't live without football and isn't football great and I live and I sleep and I drink it every day and it's the only thing that matters to me. Trevor Lawrence could have told them what they wanted but still be the same guy.
Yes.
And you would tell me that you would feel different about him because he told you what you wanted to hear? None of that makes sense to me. Let the guy be real and be honest. That doesn't mean he's not a competitor. There's a lot of guys who live, sleep, and drink football, and they can't play. I don't care how good they are, Aaron, how much they love the game. They can't play. So this whole notion doesn't make any sense. I've always heard this. I laughed at this. All the coaches. Oh, he never goes home to his family. He sleeps on the couch, and he watches film all day until he falls asleep at night. And guess what? That coach hasn't won a Super Bowl. That coach hasn't won a division. Does that mean he's better than another guy because that guy goes home for dinner with his family after he does his work? It's a fraud. It's the phony fraud football that people put out there, that if you're not all the way in, you can't excel or you can't achieve. You got to sell them wolf tickets. You got to lie to them to make them feel good. He could have easily, Trevor Lawrence, gone out and given them what they want. Man, if we lose a game, I know I only lost 2 games in my college career, but when we lost, I couldn't sleep for the next 4 days. And then you would salivate about them? Is that what you want them to do? To lie to you?
Rob, I'm so glad that you said this, and we brought up this topic. I had no idea where you were going, but I am 100% on board with you. First of all, what I would say, this is a real problem for people in both football, basketball. I don't know if about baseball. Maybe you know a little bit about the draft process. These kids have been so well coached to give the cliche answers that they don't know the truth when these kids are saying it. But to me, two things stand out when I hear that Trevor Lawrence, he doesn't have a killer instinct or a passion for football. First of all, one, to have a chip on your shoulder, somebody had to doubt you at some point.
Right.
No one has ever doubted him. He was the number one player in his high school class. He comes to Clemson 4 games in. He beats out a senior for the starting job. He never gives it up. As you said, 34-2 as a starter. How about this? His 2 losses, one was to some guy named Joe Burrow, who I think was pretty good.
And the other one was in the championship game.
The other one was this year to Justin Fields, and his defense gave up 49 points.
Thank you.
Is he supposed to score 51? And so what it goes back to me is a few things. Is one, if you just watch the games, the guy wears his heart on his sleeve. I was lucky enough 2 years ago to be on watching during the playoff on air on Fox Sports Radio with Arnie Spanier on a Saturday night when they played Ohio State. I was on air this year with you when they played Ohio State. And this guy plays so hard, puts his head down, picks up the extra yard, not afraid of contact. Don't be fooled by that head of hair. It's nonsense. What I would also say too, Rob, and I think this is an important part, not just for Trevor Lawrence, but for Justin Fields too. Back in July and August when we weren't sure we were going to have a football season, who were the 2 most prominent voices saying we want to play? Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And I sit there and say, Trevor Lawrence, I just said it. He was going to be the number 1 pick, whether he played a down at Clemson this year or not. He could have easily said, I'm not comfortable stepping in that huddle. I don't know how safe it is. I'm just going to get off the radar and train for a year. Instead, he and Justin Fields fought for football harder than anyone. I don't understand this narrative, like you said, that if you're not, I don't know. I just don't understand this narrative that if you've actually watched the kid play for one half of one game of football, you know how hard he plays and how much he loves the sport.
Why? Right? Why isn't that more important than whether or not he's selling you on this idea that he can't live or breathe without football? I really don't understand it. Who is that to pacify? We had Eric Mangini on Dan Patrick this morning, and me and him got into it over it because he said, it would bother me if I was a coach. And I was like, really? He goes, well, I don't want the guy to lie to me. That's what you want. You want to hear what you want to hear, right? Or do you want the guy to be honest? I just don't understand. What do you want? And it doesn't mean that, you're not going to draft him because he says he doesn't. Go draft an also-ran who lives and dies with football, right? Is that the guy you want who can't really play but he loves football to death? Yeah. Well, it doesn't make sense.
It's just dumb because it would bother me if he said that. Well, okay, it's one thing to say one thing, and by the way, you can have one demeanor on the court or on the field and another demeanor off the court. Tom Brady, when I see him on Instagram, he's kissing his kids and he's kissing his wife. The second he steps between those lines, he's ready to rip somebody's heart out. And I'm telling you, Rob, that 2 years ago when they played Ohio State, Trevor Lawrence, he had over 100 yards rushing. That was a game, if you remember, it was a very controversial game because there was a controversial targeting call where he got popped square in the jaw by an Ohio State defensive back. Was it targeting? Was it not? He got hit. He got crushed in that game, and Ohio State has defensive stars, NFL stars all over that defense. And so it'd be one thing if he was this 6'6" kid, long head of hair, whatever, and he looked the part and all that stuff, but Clemson went 7-5 this year, and he kind of said, well, I like the physical tools, but what's missing there? The problem was he lost 2 games his entire career. It's one thing to bother you with the quote, but it's another thing to turn on the games and actually see how he plays. And like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, he puts his heart on his sleeve, and if you can't see that watching him, frankly, I hate to say it, you probably shouldn't be in football evaluating players because you can turn on the tape and see how much this kid loves the sport.
No doubt. I think that whole mentality, that's that pack mentality and this whole notion that, you got to be – it's the same thing. We saw this now with the NFL players don't want to come in, Aaron, for the voluntary, right, workouts.
Sure.
They don't want to come in, right? And then they go, if it's voluntary, but if you don't come in, dude, you could lose your spot, your roster spot. We're going to get the guys who come in. Those are the guys we're going to look at. Well, it's called voluntary, right? Am I missing a mandatory meeting or voluntary? So if you don't do that, then they frown upon you. This is the same thing. He didn't say what they wanted to hear, which was, hey, man, this is like the only thing I ever thought about my whole life. I don't know what I would do without football. Oh, my God, this is like unreal. All I do is watch film 24 hours a day. I want to be Tom Brady. I want to cheat my way to I want to win 7 Super Bowls. I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. But you get my point. If you're not saying that, they think something's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with Trevor Lawrence. Bravo! Bravo, Trevor Lawrence, for being real. He's the same person. That's why his high school coach said he could walk away from this tomorrow. That's why his father said it's not the end of the world. Football's not the end of the world to him because, that he doesn't need a Super Bowl to feel good about himself because this is it. Because this is the real Trevor Lawrence. Those people know. That's why they said it. They know he's well-rounded. They know he's grounded. They know that football's a part of his life. It's not all of his life.
Well, and that 2 quick thoughts on that, and then we'll take some calls and all that stuff. But real quick, one, first of all I hear is all these athletes, I want to be more than an athlete. LeBron with his off the court, both his business ventures, his political ventures, whatever. Kyrie, we talked about him in hour 1. So what Trevor Lawrence is basically saying is, I want to be known as more than an athlete. I just got married this weekend at 21. I love my wife. I love my family. Whatever interests he has outside of football, that's okay. But 2, and this is what I was thinking about, Rob, when you were talking about killer mentality and all that stuff. This Patrick Mahomes kid, I think, is pretty good at this sport of football. Does he strike you as killer, foam falling from the mouth? Because he doesn't really strike me as that, and I think he's doing pretty well for himself.
I think he's doing great, and I'm with you. I just think this is the rah-rah, you got to be all the way in and whatnot. It doesn't mean that you can't work and do your job and not be, consumed by it or obsessed by it. I think that's unhealthy. He doesn't want to be stressed out over stuff that he has some he has no control over. Worry about the stuff. If this guy's not prepared or doesn't do his work, that's something else. But just because he didn't tell you that he loves football more than life itself, I'm not buying it.